All right. Ooh, that's loud. We're going to get started. I'm going to preface this by saying that almost all of this content is from HCU Network America's Emergency Toolkit. It's a 24-page PDF that's also available for review. But I think Danae wanted this to be a little more interactive and give people a chance to talk through some of the scenarios. So we're going to do that today. So I'm Sarah from Flock Health, and I'm going to get started with just the purpose of this session. We're not here to be like, okay, when the emergency happens, we know what to do, soup to nuts, and everything runs perfectly, because the definition of an emergency is that you're kind of not prepared for it, and you can't execute everything perfectly. But we want to sort of understand what it takes to make ourselves prepared, and how to understand how to make those first few decisions so things go more smoothly. The topic of this is, fix the roof when the sun is shining. That's, I don't know, maybe attributed to JFK or someone. It's really like when things are calm is the best time to start planning for when they're not calm. So we'll understand, what an emergency planning is. We'll talk about, I forgot, I had these really cool red and green signs for you guys to hold up, but you can just use your own hands. They were just red hands and green hands. We're going to talk about what you have so far and what you're prepared for, practice what to say in an urgent situation, and then do a couple of preparations for things you can take home or prepare to do when you get home. So we're just going to go over core pieces of an emergency plan, how to talk to hospital or ER staff, customize a supply checklist or a go bag. We'll talk about setting up a medical ID on your phone, or there's a printable emergency card online as well that you can use. And then give everyone a chance to name one concrete thing they want to do for follow-up after the conference. So this is where my cool red and green hands, which are out there on my table, would have helped. But think about the last time there was an emergency, and that could just be the power went out, or it could be a tornado, or it could be a sudden need to go to the ER. And what was the hardest part to manage? Does anyone want to share anything that happened? I'm not big on voluntelling people. So if you want to share, raise your hand. But if not, this next one is mandatory. Oh, we got two keepers. Okay. No, that's a good one. And that's part of what this is about, is understanding that we will all panic, but let's lay some groundwork so that we know that this is not, the first time we're thinking about these things. Mark, did you have something? Oh, no. So you were stuck in your house. And that was pretty hard to manage. Did you miss your flight? Oh, wow. Well, let's have that be a goal of all of us, to be released by the police. Yeah. No, for sure. Okay, so we're going to do a show of hands. Do any of you have an emergency letter that's up to date? I have one that says that my daughter's 2, and she's almost 13. Okay, do you have a printout or an accessible, digital version of recent labs or medical records? Yes, maybe. Okay, so these are all things that we can start to think about we might want. So it's his problem now? Right. Hopefully he was in the Adulting It Can Be Hard workshop, or can get the slides from it and know that that's one of the adulting things he has to do. Yeah, that's a real issue. I have a friend who had the same situation, and she was like, I can't advocate for him because I don't actually have access to those things. A 2-week supply plan. I think part of the reason Danae asked me to do this is because I did a lot of advocacy during the formula crisis when, metabolic formula was in short supply. And I now have a pantry full of formula because I don't want to encounter that again. And that's my maybe 2-month supply plan. But I think, particularly having lived through that recently, does anyone have backup formula or medications? Yep, pretty standard. That's great. Do you have the numbers of your doctors and pharmacy? Yep, everyone does probably. A hospitalization plan that's written out. You know which hospital you'd go to. None of this is to shame anyone for not having it. It's to start you thinking about things you might want to have. An evacuation plan. A phone, medical ID, or emergency card. And that's something you can set up on your own phone for yourself, but if it's for your child, if they're old enough to have a device or they have a backpack, you can print out the emergency card, get it laminated, stick it in the backpack in case you're not with them at the time they need help. And then do you have one other person who knows the plan? I am very guilty of being the only person in my family who has all of this in her head. And if I wasn't there, I'm not sure that all of that knowledge would transfer. And that's both that's a responsibility a lot of people put on themselves. So if we learn one thing here, it's take everything you learn and share it with someone else so that the burden isn't on you, and that so if you're not available, they can also help out. So I put some emergency scenario cards on the table, and I want you guys, you can do it in groups or, come together or join in pairs or whatever. We're gonna choose one of those scenarios and just talk about it for a few minutes. And the things that, and some of them are, hospital situations, some of them are of evacuation, or some of them are if you or your loved one cannot speak for themselves, if they're incapacitated, do they have the communication tools to build their case and to advocate for themselves? So take a few minutes. I'll just call out, I'll say 5 minutes and I'll just call out a timer. Come together in your groups and say, in the first 10 minutes of your scenario, what do you grab and do you know where it is right now? And then if you don't know where it is, make a note to yourself that that's something you'll want to, know where it is when you get back. Who are you going to call first in this scenario? And do you have their number? And does someone else also have their number? And then what's one thing you wish you'd already done? So you get this scenario and you realize you only have 2 cans of formula left and you're going to have to evacuate. That thing you wish you'd done last month is order additional formula if possible. So I'm going to walk around, you guys work in groups for a couple minutes, and then we're going to ask you to report out about your scenario and how you would answer these 3 questions. All right, I love that you guys are still talking. I hate to interrupt. And I'm a poor interrupter, it seems. So can I have someone from each group, I guess I'll take the mic so you can hear. Will that work? Yeah. Someone from each group explain what their scenario was and then talk about their responses to these questions and any other things, because these are not the only questions that might have come up, but to sort of understand how you guys handled your scenario.
Hey, my name is Jeannie. I'm a parent of Ellie, who's 8 years old with classical HCU. We do have a Chamberlain father here as well, so there's a little bit of differences between what we would grab. But we all came to the consensus that we've gotten a letter at some point that said what we're supposed to do. Not all of us know where that letter is or if it's even up to date. So that's the first thing that we think we need to do. The next thing was just talking about, let me go back. I didn't see the scenario. So we're 3 states away visiting family when a sudden illness lands on you or your child in the emergency room of a hospital that has never treated that disorder. The staff is kind but unfamiliar, and your metabolic team's office is closed for the weekend. So that's where the letter came in, where we would definitely want to give that to the physicians. Other things that hospitals usually don't have is they don't have the medicine on their formulary. They don't have the formula. Everybody needs a different formula as well. They might not know the dosing of the betaine or other medications that you might be on. And then the medical food as well. They don't know how much formula to give. So having that readily available to give them would be important. Most of us know that off the top of our heads, but depending on the hospital, sometimes you need to have that actual prescription. They won't just go by your word. So that's another thing that we should have. The metabolic team's office is closed for the weekend. So obviously the on-call phone number as well. So yeah.
Something else that occurred to me is some doctors will actually give you their cell phone number. So I had like a small crisis a couple of years ago. I was under Dr. Chapman's care, and I happened to have her cell phone number. So she called ahead to the hospital so that they had everything they needed, and I could just skip the emergency room line. So
That's awesome. Was there anything that, other than all those things you listed, that you thought you should have done the month before?
Yeah, I mean, I know I can't find the letter. I was just looking through my phone. I was like, I know I saved this on my phone, but I couldn't find it. So a month ago, I wish I would have called and got an updated letter and had that on my phone for when we needed it.
Yeah, and so my daughter has PKU, so I have a less emergent situation often, but that question of the letter changes. Like I have one from when she was 2. If I need to know the prescription, that prescription's not going to work. And so do you need to get it updated every time? Maybe it's a communication with the clinic. When they say, okay, we're changing, betaine dosing, or we're changing how much formula, it's great. Can you communicate that to the insurance company? Can you also get me a new letter? So every time you just get into that process of, great, I'm going to need that new letter. And then you've also reminded yourself that you need to have that letter somewhere where you can find it. Great. Was there anything else that came up that you want to share? Cool. Did you guys have a different scenario, I hope? Okay. Share the scenario first and then.
So our scenario was a major hurricane is forecasted to reach the area within 48 hours. And we had a mandatory evacuation. So we had to decide what to take, what to keep us on track. So our conversation went a little off track. But we all talked about the need to have supply of either it's low protein food, special food, B12, betaine, whatever it is. Sometimes it's hard to keep that, or the B12, you can't always get a lot of supply. And it expires and it's expensive. So you kind of have to manage that. We also talked about trying to have someone else help us remember to grab the medicine or the food when we leave. That has happened to a couple of us here. Also, having to keep medicines cold sometimes is a challenge. So, having ice packs on hand that might last longer than ice. We use ice, which always isn't that great. And also the emergency letter. Mine also is older, so I'm going to pull that out and take a look at it. Did I miss anything?
I think the only other thing was like having ways to prepare the low protein food or food that could be. So like having an electric tea kettle that you could pack up and take with you to heat up water to cook pasta or rice if you end up in a hotel room or someplace that doesn't have a kitchen, or possibly having prepackaged food that like applesauce that you can just grab and go. You don't have to measure, you don't have to weigh, and having the scale. And batteries. Yeah.
Yeah, thinking about remembering the medicine when you're walking out the door, even in a non-emergent situation. I had a situation, I was going through airport security with my daughter with PKU, and she takes a medicine that stains everything yellow. And we were through security and we were answering the questions and getting the bomb testing on the formula and everything. And she said, "Oh no, I spilled it on my shirt. I spilled my medicine on my shirt." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, I didn't pack any medicine." And I was just reminded of it by the fact, and we were going on vacation, but I was reminded of the fact because she said I stained it. And I was like, well, we'll be calling someone and having them some FedEx it to our destination. So that's great. There were a lot of great ideas there that we will be recording and sharing out as well. I think the ice and the batteries and the ability to contact people is really, really important. So now, because we're all getting sleepy at the end of the day, I'm going to have everyone stand up and walk over here. And there are some Post-it notes with items listed on them: betaine, low protein foods, etc. And I want each of you to take one of each Post-it note and put it on those pieces of paper, which are really hard to read, but it's must have today, helpful if possible, and ask my clinic about. So that updated clinic letter for many of us would go on that ask my clinic about. And I want to just see what the distribution is in terms of what you must have today as you're walking out the door in an emergency, what would be helpful, and then what you need to ask your clinic about. And we'll take pictures of all this and send you the ask clinic about so you remember to do it. I was never a kindergarten teacher like Danae. I don't know if she taught kindergarten, but this was a fun exercise, and there's actually enough variety of color here. I mean, there's a lot of medical formula over here for sure. Measuring tools, because you can't just eat it out of the can. Betaine was very important to everyone. Emergency letter. Chargers ended in the must-have over here from you. Oh, you put yours in helpful, okay. But again, these, as you can see, these are the things we need today. Like, we're not going to survive the next couple days without them. Chargers, recent lab reports, obviously really important, but not something for in the moment. The contact list, the ID tools, vendor contact, that's all something that's going to come a little bit later. Now, the emergency letter for a lot of people ended in Ask Clinic. So I think we have a couple people, at least one person who had it here, which is great. But so I think we all have our takeaway, which is make sure we have the updated emergency letter. Water, also really important, to the point about the ice packs as well. Like, you've got to have fresh water to make it. And if you're on the road or you don't know, I've actually had my daughter refuse her formula because the water was different in the state we went to. It just tasted different to her. And so having just a trunk full of bottled water is maybe helpful if you're evacuating. So I want to go up, and we have a few more minutes. So does anyone want to do their 60-second script about themselves or their child when they get to the emergency room? Do we have any? Garrett, is that you standing up here asking? Okay. Does anyone want to say it, or do you just want to think about having it the next time, which is also fine? Okay, we'll let that one go. But do think about, again, I mean, I think you all called it out in your emergencies, scenario that they might not have the formula. They also do not understand the low protein diet. Like, literally, okay, so you're low protein, you're vegetarian. Okay, we brought you some hummus. And you're like, no, that doesn't work. So really making sure that the hospital understands what the low protein diet is about in 60 seconds or less is pretty important for those on a low protein diet. So we talked about ID tools. On the iPhone, and we'll send these directions out, but you can go to the health app, which is the little white square with the red heart, profile, medical ID, and then edit it and show when locked. Now, that doesn't necessarily cover the photo of your beautiful children or of your dog or whatever's on your home screen, but it means that if your phone is locked and you are incapacitated or your child is incapacitated, on the newer models of an iPhone, you can swipe and show the medical ID. So someone is incapacitated, you can reveal the medical ID, which has the contact information, the name of the diagnosis, and any steps that need to be taken. Same thing on Android, settings, emergency information, and then add in those important details and contacts. For those of you who have 2-year-olds who are not carrying around a phone, for example, and I have a QR code for the emergency kit at the end. There is a printed version. You can fill it in, like I said, laminate it, put it in a backpack, give it to the teachers at school so that they have, or daycare, so that they have all the information they need. So the next steps as we end this is think about one thing you'll do in the next 7 days, one thing you need from your clinic, which is the clinic letter for almost all of us, one supply you need to check or restock. Maybe that's just making sure there's some ice packs in the freezer so it's ready to go, or seeing if you need to have an extra supply of formula that you can take with you. And then again, one person you need to share this plan with, so you're not the only person who's prepared in an emergency, because there's a chance that you might be the person in an emergency and someone else will have to take care of you or your child with a condition. The last thing is just the toolkit that Danae and team developed. It's really fantastic, and sort of where all this came from. So I take zero credit for this. If there were problems with it, it was mine. But the toolkit just has a lot of these resources and exercises and more. So download it if you want to fill out that emergency card for your kid, but it also has template letters and other things that you can send to your clinic and say, this is what I want to have, so I'm ready to go at any point. And we did it. We ended 2 minutes early. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them, but mostly just want to thank you for participating. Question? Yeah, that's a really good point. I just want to repeat it. When you get all these plans, leave them with your lawyer. And it's funny because Dr. Chapman said to me, in this session, in the emergency preparedness session, are you talking about creating wills? And I said, no, I'm not. And she said, well, I better add that to the adulting, it can be hard section. But which I don't know if she did, but it's true that having a will or a power of attorney or who's going to take care of your kid if you're not there is really important. And that's part of a emergency kit that we probably none of us really want to think about. But, it's something that's vital. And then again, once you have that information, filing it with your lawyer and probably another person in your family who can have access to it. Mark? Yeah, for sure. Making sure it's sort of like burying the information in a few different pockets in your life so that, in an emergency situation, it is accessible and you haven't wasted all this wonderful prep work that you've done, and whoever else can come in and help you. So with that said, I hope we never have any of these emergencies, but hopefully at least we've thought about some ways to be a little more prepared, and download the toolkit, and we'll send out these pretty pictures for the people who didn't join us so they can add their, so they can understand as well what we thought were the most important things and maybe start to think about that for themselves. Thanks all for coming.